everyone, and thanks for joining us once again in Transforming the World Through Reflections. Today, I'm joined by one of my beautiful friends, Marissa Chibás. And we are going to have such a delicious conversation because we're going to focus on the power of theater, which she's a huge part of. Marissa is a writer, director, award-winning filmmaker, actor. We're going to jump in.
Let's jump in.
We're going to jump in. Thanks for joining me.
It is my great honor and pleasure to be here with you.
So glad that we're going to do this because we do get to have these conversations in the community that we share, California Institute of the Arts. That's how we met. We get to collaborate in many different ways. I've learned so much watching and listening to you, and we've sometimes merged our areas of expertise to support the wellness of students. And so it's just a pleasure to have this opportunity that this offers for us to jump into some more on theater.
Fantastic, I'm ready.
All right. So, what have you been reflecting on more recently as the arts world is in a bit of upheaval right now?
Oh, yes, it is. Everything's in upheaval.
Yes.
Right? That's one of the things the pandemic gave us was a dislodging of everything.
Yes.
A disruption of everything.
A necessary disruption.
A necessary disruption of everything. And hopefully it does feel that there are many new ways of thinking and approaching work that has come forward because of the pandemic and people thinking more deeply. I've been thinking a lot about the importance of rejecting the corporate, which I also associate with the literal and the rational. And I feel that right now the arts need to be even more disruptive and more aligned with the mythic and the mythopoetic and with metaphor. And really inviting audiences, finding ways of, through kindness and maybe a little trickster energy, which is not always very kind.
Strategic,
that's it.
Yeah.
Bringing audiences to dislodge themselves from rigidity and what I associate with corporate thinking and open us up to the imaginative and so that we can imagine better futures, more just futures, more just present.
Yes.
That's the other thing that really has come up, I feel, from these few years and the challenges that we've all been through together is this is no time for like sometime down the road things will change. No, they gotta change now.
Now, something's gotta give.
Things have to give now.
Yeah.
And we have to listen to the earth, and we need to work together and to I feel the arts really bring us to our humanity and to the essential in terms of how we need to be in communion together.
Yes. So community. That's the common thread in your reflections as I'm listening. And the power of community in the process of healing. And theater, such a space of invitation into a sense of community. At least that's how I experience it.
Absolutely.
A space of exploration in community.
And wonder.
Mm.
I feel that um, I was listening to a podcast between Daniel Alexander Jones, who's part of the CalArts Center for New Performance team, and Monty Cole,
Mm-hmm.
who directed this year's world premiere of Audrey and Kennedy's play Ed and Ella on the Upper West Side. And one of the things that Monty said is that I just love is that we need to get more curious in our theater making. I love that because when the curious person doesn't know it all, right? And to me, we are so far from knowing it all.
Yeah.
And so the work has to reflect that unknowing.
Yeah.
And that seeking and that curiosity and that wonder. And that means giving things up. That I think it's important that theater makers and myself also as a filmmaker, I feel very strongly about this, that we have to create spaces that allows audiences to not know, to let themselves be and allow for some confusion, allow for not neat, this is the answer to everything, but real poetic, right?
Yeah.
Poetic discourse, real allowing metaphors to speak in deep ways to people individually, where they can come out of projects with very different experiences, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh! As I'm listening to you, Marissa, I'm feeling a bit of effervescence, if you will, because it resonates so much with the work of therapy. When you said allow curiosity, allow for confusion, oh my gosh, so much of the process of healing is centered in cultivating curiosity, reconnecting with curiosity, allowing oneself to be with discomfort, perhaps in a new way, and be curious, to allow curiosity to take up the space that otherwise judgment would take up, and then when I heard you say, well, the neat answers, so true of our work as well. The idea that, sometimes you will not have a tidy answer, and it's okay. Sometimes it's more interesting or of greater value to notice a new question.
Oh, I love that.
Just to notice a new question. Yeah. How it opens up a path for discovery.
I think just like in the process of therapy, there's so many connections between our worlds, Melissa, and it's something we've talked about before. And
yes.
But just this, I feel that there's, in our processes, whether we're an audience member, an artist making art, or a person in therapy, at some point we're going to get into a wild wood. And it's going to be tangled and scary, and there'll be frightening creatures, and right, and that there's something beautiful and necessary about being in that.
Yes.
And having tools to be able to know, okay, I don't know what's going to happen here, but it's okay. Because the stories tell us that this is part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's always been part of the journey to have that tangled wood, that those ordeals, right? And I feel that one of the things that I really want to see happen as we're moving out of this pandemic and as new work is made, uh, is giving our audiences tools to know it's okay to not be understanding everything.
Yes. Just that,
Just that.
just that. And that'll open up so much
Yeah.
in this post-pandemic growth, if you want to call it that, that it's okay not to know everything. It's okay to just suspect.
And remember, it's that we forget, or I've heard the theater spoken about a lot as a product.
Mm.
It's not a product, right? It has its history is over 40,000 years old, right? We see in those caves of Chauvet that in France, in southern France, that people were telling stories in those caves, right?
Mhm.
It's necessary. It's as necessary as eating,
Breathing.
and breathing, and
Yes.
sleeping, and
Yes.
loving.
Processing.
It's processing our existence. That's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that profound, deep spiritual element confounds the corporate, the literal.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to keep confounding it.
Well, my hope is that because the pandemic has made so many things visible, that this too will be one of those things that's become more visible. The necessity for experiences that promote confounding, if you will, and that there's a safe space to do it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that we hear from a wide variety of voices,
Mm-hmm.
and especially hearing stories from communities that haven't been told, have not been represented, right? There's quite a lot.
Right. So many
Quite a lot of
stories.
that. Even ways of telling stories, because I feel that one of my big passions has been supporting young artists and adventurous artists, and artists who are interested in telling stories in new ways and with new forms, and that may be outside of the canon or the way things are supposed to be done at a resident theater. Well, open that up. It's time to open that up.
Yeah.
Resident theaters are struggling. The pandemic is shutting down, or even for some periods of time, but who knows how long, many huge, big, important theaters in the United States, right? It's having a profound effect. We're not getting our audiences back. Donations are down, right? There is no public funding. That ended in 1980. And so what's going to happen? Well, I do feel that something else has to give. And part of that has to be listening to younger artists and how they are interested in bringing forward work, and making sure that their voices are supported, and intergenerational collaborations, where my experience, decades experience, can support the vision of a younger artist.
Of a younger
right?
artist.
I'm really interested in that.
And the arts will persist.
Oh, of course.
The arts will persist, because we could not have made it through a pandemic without the arts. We
true.
couldn't have. It was essential. You heard it in the music that people were sharing with each other, the creative ways to figure out how to connect, if even virtually, for those who actually had the luxury of technology that connects us virtually, because that's another thing. Disparities in terms of resources became more visible. Not everybody had that luxury to say, I'm tired of Zoom, and yet so much creativity helped us to survive, to figure out new ways. So the arts will persist. They will persist. It is so worrisome, though, that, um, funding that could be directed to all these different forms of art making is going in other directions. Because the arts tell our stories. This is essential for healing, for understanding humanness.
Absolutely. I do think that there's one of the things that emerged from the pandemic and our George Floyd's murder and the social. One of the things that came up after the pandemic and George Floyd's murder and all the social unrest was coming together of a lot of different groups to work together. And one of the things that I'm feeling can emerge right now is a kind of triumvirate of worlds, of the arts world and the environmentalist world and the therapeutic world, right? Imagining together, okay, our resources are all really thin. We are working very much in, or could be working very much in communion with each other.
Yes.
How can we make that happen?
Yes.
And when I say the therapeutic word, I'm also thinking science, right? So it's like that there's a real potential there for another kind of support, right? Because we're coming together.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
there are a lot of different groups that are doing this and finding resources because of that.
Yes.
And finding new spaces in which to create. Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering what's happening with these movie theaters that are closing down, and I'm thinking, well, couldn't the performing arts community connect with these spaces, and couldn't there be some way of us working together to bring back audiences?
Yes.
I'm sure I'm not the only person having that idea. But there's right now, I think there's a lot of, and not just in the arts, in a lot of different sectors, just realizing, wow, we have to reimagine. This is a time for reinvention.
That is the word that came up for me as I was listening, and you said it next. We are in a reimagining. And in that process, a lot of energy is needed. And how do we replenish energy that was drained from that collective trauma that was the pandemic, so that we have as much energy as we can to do this reimagining, this interdisciplinary reimagining, where we're coming together, different communities bringing their own flavor, their own delicious expertise, coming together.
I think a lot of that is to listen to our ancestors, to consciously ask for their aid in very real ways, in very present ways, and then also to lean on those stories that have been passed down.
Yes.
So that we can learn from how our ancestors did things. I think it's a very interesting moment in which we're trying to figure out what to do about these fires and about so many things environmentally
Mm-hmm.
that are really taking us back to, well, how were things done before the Industrial Revolution?
Right.
And how can those practices, ancient practices, help us, guide us, inform us, give us the ability to survive, not just survive this,
Mm-hmm.
but thrive, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thrive.
So I do think that that's where theater and film and storytelling and the arts, because we can share and bring back those old stories
Yes.
in new ways
Yes.
that are meaningful for our situation right now and
Mm-hmm.
the urgent needs right now.
Mm-hmm. In what ways would you say that reconnecting with ancestral wisdom and memories has been helpful to you, not only professionally, but in other areas of your life?
Oh, I think it's the center of my life. It really does feel like the center of my life. I was just telling my husband Travis this morning how interesting it is that there are certain stories that keep coming back to me
Mm-hmm.
and keep offering more and more wisdom. The Parsifal legend is one that is always like bringing me back to something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, I feel like it's present every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's hard for me to articulate right now personally in how many ways. I think part of it is just I do ask for help a lot when I'm writing. I am
Yeah.
very much listening. I'm woken up in the middle of the night. And then I have to start writing. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's very particular ancestors. When I was making my film, A Cuban Documentary,
Mm-hmm.
it was my great-grandmother, Luisa Gramonte,
Mm.
who was very present for me in my imagination and my psyche and leading that process. Right now with my film
72.
it's my mother.
Oh.
She's been guiding that film very, and when I start to feel a little, oh, how am I going to do this? And you know, I have had a lot of struggles in the process of making this film. I've made a short film that's a proof of concept, and then of course working on the feature film script, which I'm hoping to shoot sometime next year.
Wonderful.
I've just felt like, oh, how am I going to do this? And I just hear, sigue, Mari.
Sigue.
Keep going.
Ah.
You know, like the strength that's, I mean, we have so many people behind us, also
Yeah.
kindred spirits, right? Because
Yeah.
there are so many artists that have passed that I consider ancestors, who I admire,
Mm-hmm.
and who inspire me.
Yeah.
They inspire me. I see the work. I read about the kinds of struggles they've had, or they did have, and it makes me feel less alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And more like, oh, I've got that behind me. I've got folks who've got my back, whether
Yeah.
and blood or spirit or kindred.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think, you know, and that's what I'm leaning on sometimes. Totally lying back. Hold me up.
Hold me. Yeah, I mean, I would submit that in the pandemic, many of us were saying, hold me. I can tell you that to be a therapist during the pandemic, wow, I am at a loss of words. And particularly to be a therapist of color. It was very, very difficult. So I did a lot of what you just said, hold me, please, hold me. Because I need the energy.
And we can hold each other through that. And it's so important that, you know, we all have to go through what we have to go through, and we have to go through those tangled woods.
Yes.
But we also must have hope and gratitude for the simplest things in every little moment that offer us
Yes.
that wisdom,
Yes.
that offer us that beauty, that sustenance, that ability to know it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You're speaking to my heart because I find that when I remind myself of delighting in the simplest things, I reconnect with what I like to call living deliciously. Delighting in simplicity.
It's funny because the first thing that came to my mind when you said that were my two dogs, Almond and Bowie. And, they just talk about delight.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I could be in the worst mood, but they'll just look at me with those eyes.
And that's it.
And they just want to play. And then they shake me out
Mm-hmm.
of whatever I'm in that is spinning me in places that that's useless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like taking a walk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm finding walks so rich since the pandemic.
Yes.
I'm noticing things that I didn't notice as much before, or not as deeply, and
Mm-hmm.
appreciating them. I think partly it's also age. I feel so grateful to
Uh-huh.
have walked the earth as long as I have. I have friends who I grew up with who didn't get to walk this long.
This long.
And I feel tremendous gratitude for that, for the communities I get to be a part of.
Yeah.
Just sitting here with you right now.
Yes. I feel the same way. And you and I have talked about how it seems as if because of what we longed for so intensely during the pandemic, we grew to appreciate certain things more in their absence. And now that we're out, as they say, it's like things are being experienced in a more bright way, in a more intense way. You hear people say, "Oh, we're out now. We're outside now." And things that we probably didn't celebrate as much, now we do.
Yeah,
because we needed it for so long.
and we need to hold on to that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It'll be very easy to forget that.
Yeah.
Forget that deliciousness.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And may that energy infuse that curiosity you were talking about earlier. May it infuse it, because we need to stay curious if we are to keep the momentum of addressing issues that our ancestors want us to address, and that have really come to critical mass.
I love that.
You know?
And that's so important because I'm as in Joseph Campbell's view of the hero's journey. I love that the first step on the hero's journey is refusal of the call. Right? It's like, because
I know.
Really?
The weightiness. The weightiness.
And
the
I
weightiness.
can't tell you how many times I started a project thinking, this is what I want to do. And then suddenly something is like tapping me on the shoulder. I'm like, no,
No, not today.
that? But I want to do this other thing.
Yeah.
But then it's very clear.
Yeah.
There's something more powerful, deeper that wants
Yeah.
to come through.
Yeah.
And we do have to listen to that.
We need
May
to.
we listen to that. May we listen to them.
To them.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. I mean, as tragic as it was to lose thousands and thousands of people worldwide in this chaos that was the pandemic, there's also beauty to be found if we let ourselves take a step back, catch a panoramic view, and see the opportunities. And hopefully certain things that have been just throbbing for centuries get some deeper attention.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. And what a loss. I mean, millions. I mean,
Millions.
This was, so those of us who
Yeah.
have been granted survival, there's some responsibility there.
Yeah.
And not as there's a responsibility and a joy
Yes.
surviving, right?
Yes.
And I think it's a big part of the artist's work is honoring the past.
Mm-hmm.
The goddess of the arts is also the goddess of memory
Mm.
in Greek classical the Greek classical tradition, right? And that's not a coincidence. We need to remember.
Yeah.
We need to honor those we lost. We need to honor the ancestors. We need to remember for the culture things that they don't want to
Uh-huh.
remember so that we don't repeat patterns,
Exactly.
so that we break patterns
Mm-hmm.
and forge new ways of being together with dignity
Mm-hmm.
for everyone.
Yeah. Deeper listening. Deeper listening so that we can honor each other's dignity. You know? I found, speaking of our work at CalArts, I found students to be so deeply reflective about community, about the purpose of their art making. Not that previous CalArts communities were not, because, I mean, it's a
Part of
world
the
of
DNA.
artists. Exactly. Exactly. It's about the nuanced impact of the pandemic on the artist's world, inner world. Oh my gosh. The reflections were so powerful and invited me to stretch more, in ways that I needed to. And I'm wondering, as faculty, what did you notice, in this community of artists, who came into CalArts in the midst of a pandemic and are walking together out of the pandemic? What stood out to you?
That, well, certainly the people who chose to come back, because not a lot of people decided, no, I'm not doing this,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
They really wanted to be there, and they were really driven by passion and something in them really calling them,
Mm-hmm.
really answering the call.
Yeah.
I really felt I saw a level of discipline from
Mhm.
students, particularly this past year,
Mm-hmm.
that was another kind of drive,
Mm.
another kind of dedication. That's the word. Real deep dedication
Mm-hmm.
and belief in the power of what they can do and what they can make.
Yeah.
And I saw that reflected in the work they made.
Yeah.
It was very, very moving this past couple of years.
Beautiful.
Well, all these years, the work that was done through Zoom was very rich and moving and
Yeah.
painful
Yeah.
because we wanted so much to be together.
Yeah.
And we felt that absence in our art form, especially.
It
was
blew
like,
me away.
how do we do this?
It blew me away to see what they created virtually.
And there were some people are now making films because of that, because it opened up that
Mhm.
way of seeing.
Mm-hmm. Again, curiosity.
Exactly.
What if?
Exactly.
Just feeding the what if.
Necessity is the mother of invention, they say. So
Right. Yes.
hay que inventar.
Hay que inventar. See, you get it. You get a Spanglish moment.
That's right.
Brought to you by Marissa and Melissa.
We can't help it.
It's really heartening to constantly be in the presence of the way art making is a balm for individual wounds and collective wounds. and a lot of salt was poured on long-standing wounds, and so we're seeing upheaval in different sectors of communities, nationally and internationally. Do you feel hopeful that headway can be made through new theater works to address the upheavals and find solutions?
I definitely believe in the power of the arts, the theater, and all of the arts to bring us to deep places of reflection and change. I do think those changes sometimes, oftentimes, are very individual,
Mm-hmm.
but that's where it starts,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that doesn't make the change lesser. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
If someone is really has a deep spiritual experience from witnessing a work of art,
Mm.
that changes the world. I really believe that. And most of the people I know, that's what they're striving to
For
do.
in that process, and again, because the pandemic experience has invited us to notice areas where we can do things in a new way. For example, in that process, do you see it happening in the arts world, in the theater world, that the people who are part of that arts community are changing the ways they do certain things? Have they found a need for it at all? What are your thoughts? What are your observations?
Yeah, I do see. Um, I recently, the first thing that came to mind was recently I was at 2220 Arts and Wild Up,
Mm,
which is a music group, had a concert,
yeah.
and it was really euphoric. And it was
Mm,
euphoric because they there were some pieces that were composed during the pandemic,
mm,
and they had a deep resonance for me. All of the music did. It was an incredible concert. Um, but there was also the spirit in which they created the space of us coming together as audience
mm.
was incredibly kind and generous and appreciative of, wow, we are here together. Can you believe it? and really letting us be in the awe of that and
Mm,
appreciation of that.
mm-hmm.
And that I feel is something new. The
Okay.
very first piece I saw, live performance I saw, was at Red Cat, the Now Festival in 2021. And there was a feeling in the audience of that similar kind of euphoric, like, wow, we're here together. We're
Finally.
in the same space. We're breathing through masks, but
Yes.
breathing,
Yes.
which, when a performer's voice comes through, or someone dances, or a piece of music is coming through you, you feel the air in a different way,
So
right? When
true.
it's live, it affects your skin. It affects your
Yes.
spirit.
Yes.
It's there is no substitute to the live event.
Without a doubt.
And I feel that part of what made those experiences, and a lot of these theater experiences I've had since I started beginning to come back, is that the artists are infusing their work with that euphoria,
Euphoria. Yeah.
with that also, there's another kind of kindness I'm feeling.
Yeah.
There's a kinder approach because it's a little like, I don't know, rubbing the belly of a cat, right? You have to do it so carefully because they're a little, you know.
We have to be gentle.
We have to be gentle.
We're
with
still
this audience.
transitioning. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
To be gentle with this audience. You know,
So
maybe we'll
we've
get rough later, but
so we so we've come back more compassionate.
I mean, I'm experiencing that. Yeah, I am, and I'm very hopeful. Very
Mm,
hopeful.
beautiful. I can so relate to the euphoria that you were describing. That happened in those first live events. My husband and I took a jazz cruise. And it's a cruise that happens every year, but it was our first time on that particular cruise. And they had, of course, suspended it during the pandemic. And there was a special energy about it because these artists who participate frequently, it was their first time back, and it was the first time back of this cruise. I can't even begin to explain the excitement that it was. I mean, all the regular cruise goers were excited to see each other. Some of our friends were there. We were celebrating his birthday, celebrating his retirement, and and also the fact that we had the opportunity to be in the presence of these musicians every day, all day, for a whole week. And it was just delicious. Yes, it was so delicious. If you love jazz, that was jazz heaven. I will never forget it. He loved it. And, in the same way, we go to the theater a lot. And during the pandemic, we missed it so much. And once we were out, even if you needed a mask, but we were out. Next week, we're going to see a play, The Mountaintop. I can't wait. You know, it is such a special experience for us because we get to explore storytelling. We get to notice, I can relate to this, I can relate to that. And wow, this story was set in this particular decade and it's 2023 and it's still happening. Those types of conversations.
Right.
That, the art will do that. The arts will do that. I am thankful for it. It's essential, like you said earlier, like breathing. And yet artists invest so much energy in this process. And as I say this, thinking of conversations I've had with so many artists about this, and I'm wondering what you would say to this question. How do you replenish your energy? Because you use it in such an emotionally charged way as an artist. How do you replenish?
That's really important. It's something I address with my students when I'm working with them. I have them make lists of, what gives you sanctuary, what inspires you, what replenishes you, what's going to the well, so that you have like a list of things. You know what those things are.
Yes.
And I remember when I did one of these lists once, I realized that watching basketball was one, and that I hadn't watched basketball in a few years. And I was like, why haven't I done that?
Yeah.
But I meditate every day.
Beautiful.
There's a great expression in theater. We don't have much time, so let's slow down. And so I find myself able to, because I have a lot of hats. I'm a teacher, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a writer, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, Yes. And I do get a lot done. And part of it is I have learned to slow down,
Mm-hmm.
and I am, and the pandemic helped me with this.
Mm.
I'm gotten much better at saying no. As much as I want to do everything, I cannot do everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so being wise about what I can or can't do, or say yes to and no to, has really been a very important and very long, long lesson for me.
Yeah.
Because I tend to way, way overbook. And I create these, so I'm about to go into what I call my cave time,
I love it. I love it.
where I just am not scheduling anything for 2 weeks, and I am just going to listen,
Beautiful.
do some work, listening to the ancestors and writing, and really being, letting
Beautiful.
myself be. The ocean is a big important place for me.
Oh, I can relate to that one. I'm Caribbean after all,
Of
as are you.
Listening to Yemaya,
Uh-huh.
feeling that ocean energy, and
Mm-hmm.
nature is really important in that way for me as well, in terms of replenishment. But also great art will do that.
Yes.
I saw last week, I went to the final day of the Anselm Kiefer, beautiful German painter exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, it filled my soul. It just, I felt so invigorated and inspired afterwards. This is an artist whose work I've been admiring for decades now.
Yeah.
So to be able to, it's one of those constants, right? There's some writers like that.
Yes.
Joy Harjo is a writer right now who I'm loving reading her work. So
Beautiful. We definitely need to create space for all these replenishing experiences. I love that phrase, and I want to hold on to it. We don't have time. Say it again, please.
we don't have much time, so let's
So
go
let's
real
slow
slow.
down. Okay.
Let's slow down.
Let's slow down. That's a life lesson. That is a life lesson.
Because when you're in a rush, you make mistakes.
Exactly.
And things get all. But if you just go,
Hear that? Yes. And that's where we catch the big picture. That's where we catch it. It has so much more information. And we're able to be more deliberate. You know? Thriving choices can happen there.
that's right.
Yes. Yes. And
Your book was a replenishing.
thank you. I'm so
Was a
glad to hear
replenisher
it.
for me, and every once in a while, because it's one of the great things about it is that it's in these pieces, right? Little recetas, little recipes here and there, right?
Yes.
And having those things on hand, I have several different things near me in on a bookshelf. When
To
I
reach
need them,
out.
I have to reach to them.
I can relate. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that it was helpful. That was my deepest hope. And I find that writing is like my own therapy. And that's how that came to be, that book came to be. And also, knowing that I have a circle of support that's really, really special to me. Not only here in LA where we live, but back in my country in Panama. So, I feel well supported.
Oh, that's so essential. That's important.
Yes, yes.
Who are those people who have your back?
Yes,
That are there for you.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and also one thing that I have to say the meditation has really helped me with
Mm-hmm.
is when I feel myself spinning into
Mm-hmm.
that thing,
Yeah.
that craziness
Yes.
of that is really it's not helpful and not real. That's the great thing is the meditation has really shown me, like, oh, those thoughts that take me in these really unpleasant places, that's not real.
Yeah.
It's not real,
Yeah.
right? And that what is real is that love of that community you were talking about, the support. That is real. That love is real.
Yeah.
And really allowing, really finally feeling that and believing it and knowing I can rest in that is so important.
Yes. To rest in that, supportive circle, supportive resources that are outside of us as well as the ones inside of us.
I love telling my students, whoever you are, wherever you come from great stories.
Mm.
And it's something that I can see, like, people's eyes kind of widen when I say that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, there's some people who feel like, oh, are my stories as important? No, yes, they are. Everybody comes from great stories, right? We all come from from wisdom.
Yeah.
And we can draw on that. We can lean on those mythologies to help guide us, lead us, give us that sustenance.
Yes.
Replenish us.
Yes. I mean, those stories brought us to this moment, right? They brought us to this moment, and I can see how those reflections informed your writing when you created this book about, myths and imagination and how it supports the work of actors.
Yes, my book, Mythic Imagination and the Actor. And I wrote it not as a substitute for method acting, and it's not a method. I say it's an invitation. And it's an invitation to bring metaphor into our work, mystery, the mythopoetic, and to allow for the power of myths, the power of these great stories connected to our ancestors, whether of blood or kindred or spirit, to inform our path and to inform our process as artists. That our work can really deepen when we allow that in.
And when communities are in the presence of artists who allow themselves to be guided by their imagination, you're also inviting us to be guided by our imagination, and
That's right.
And so I welcome the invitation. And hopefully we as a global community allow ourselves to continue being invited by the arts to reflect on the power we have inside to heal individually and as members of different communities.
And that's something that our stories do tell us, that we have that power, right? That's a big, all stories, folk tales, right? They have that element of, even like the smallest little bug ends up being a hero, right?
Right? Yes.
Yes, we no matter how small we may feel, we have great power.
Yes.
To move things forward.
Yes, all of us.
Together.
All of us, exactly. I think that's a beautiful note to end on.
I think so too.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us once again. And may we continue transforming the world through reflections.